My name is Sydney Songer. I'm a holistic wellness practitioner and the Gemstone Education Specialist with Gemisphere, and today I want to talk about turquoise beryl, which I'm very excited to announce we actually have back in stock. And I'm filming a little bit closer today than I usually do because I'm getting to wear one, which is amazing. These things are gorgeous, and I really wanted you to be able to kind of get a good look at it. And I hope the light is doing it justice. But so the entire mission of turquoise beryl is about the mystical journey. What does that mean? It's about gaining inner wisdom, enhancing intuition, helping us to gain more of a feeling of self-worth, self-confidence. It helps to enhance dream states. It can be very supportive in things like shamanic work or any kind of more mystical or spiritual journeying that you might be trying to do. But today I really want to talk about, I'm going to cover the mystical side, but I really also want to talk about the more practical psychological side, where it dives into helping us gain access to all of the wisdom and knowledge that's stored in our subconscious and might not currently be available to our awareness, because there is an immense amount of potential, an immense amount of untapped resources that is stored in our subconscious. And when we gain access to that inner aspect of ourselves, it's really amazing the amount of harmony and depth and knowledge and self-actualization that can begin to occur once we're integrating that subconscious knowledge into our conscious mind and bringing it into our awareness so that we can enact it in our lives. So first I want to talk a little bit more about the subconscious and the conscious mind, the roles that they play in our life and in our growth and evolution, and some of the things that can happen over time that causes us to sort of lose the ability to tap into the information that's available in the subconscious. So our mind is this incredibly complex machine that is constantly absorbing information pretty much throughout our entire lives, constantly, even when we're sleeping. And what happens is that it has to kind of make executive decisions to sort through all of this information that's coming in. Now, this could be information that is directly coming in, like you're sitting in a class and you're absorbing information. It could be something that you're studying, you're paying attention to it, or it could be peripheral stimulation and information coming in from your five senses. So what happens is that the mind has to determine what's important to keep, what's important to bring to your immediate awareness, and what is maybe not necessary at all. So there are the things where it sets off an alert and it diverts your attention to it. So this is an example of you're minding your business, you're having a conversation, you're very focused on one area, and all of a sudden your awareness snaps over here for something, and you realize that you're about to get hit by a biker on the sidewalk, or something is happening, but your peripheral knowledge gathering has triggered something in the subconscious that sent it to the conscious mind to say, hey, you need to divert awareness now. So what happens is that as we're growing, we're basically developing, it's almost like internal software, where we're training the brain to create certain pathways and triggers to help it sort all of this information coming in. And we have to understand that the brain at its very core is designed to try and keep us safe, to try and keep us alive. And so that's where emotions like fear and anxiety and stress come into play as being actually very valuable, because they are designed to try and keep us alive, essentially. The problem is when they become rampant, of course, and they are present when they shouldn't be, or we're unable to shift out of that emotion and turn that energy down. But so the subconscious throughout our entire life, all of this information that it's gathering, it's storing such a vast amount of information, and not all of it is stuff that actually passes through our awareness. So there is literally a treasure trove of information sort of residing in the subconscious mind, waiting to be utilized, waiting to be integrated. It's like all of a sudden you use a word and you're, I didn't know I knew that word, but it's just been in there. You picked it up somewhere, you read it, you weren't really paying attention, but your brain was. And so it's important to know that accessing this information is not always super easy. This is why we have psychotherapists. This is why we have hypnosis, why we have things like EMDR, different forms of counseling and therapeutic modalities that are actually designed to try and access the subconscious and either recalibrate that software or bring more awareness to the forefront so that we function better. Because when our subconscious and our conscious mind are integrated in a really healthy way and there's a flow of information passing between the two, there's a certain all-encompassing sense of systemic harmony that begins to happen. A lot of mental and emotional more stressful conditions or phases that we go through, and including physical issues, a lot of times it has to do with the fact that we have become sort of fragmented within ourselves and we're not accessing all of the valuable knowledge that is stored within. This happens when we go through any sort of perceived trauma. Now, there's no right or wrong to what we individually can perceive as trauma or what the brain is going to perceive as trauma. But what happens is that every time something that is perceived as dangerous or traumatic happens, the mind goes through this process of sort of automatically compartmentalizing, creating walls, creating barriers, deciding what's important for us to pay attention to and what might be too painful. This is where we end up with things like repressed memories or just scattered memories. You try to think back to a period of time and you realize that it's really fuzzy and it should be more, considering how intense the situation was, you would think you would remember it better. So, as this sort of like fracturing of the mind occurs over time, we become more and more disjointed from ourselves. When this happens, it can be harder for us to feel really confident in what we're thinking and feeling. It can be harder for us to really know our self-worth because we don't have all of ourselves here and in the forefront and available to us. It can be harder for us to make decisions. We might start to experience issues with our sleep. This can show up, of course, as I mentioned, mental, emotional, or physical symptoms where it's causing all of our parts to not communicate. And so dysfunction starts to arise. So having the ability to cross this gap and to sort of tear down these walls that have been created, to unbox the things that have been compartmentalized. And I know that can sound scary, but there's a lot of good things that get lost in translation too. Once we start doing this work, if you do it slowly, and by the way, this is an amazing necklace to use in conjunction with something like talk therapy or EMDR or parts work, if you're familiar with that. So as you're working to try and sort through these levels of subconscious, walling off, repatterning, compartmentalizing, this can be a wonderful tool to help that go more smoothly, to really kind of help knock those walls down and help us access all of this stored information and knowledge and skill sets and wisdom that's in there, and bring it to the forefront. So this is something to keep in mind if you're doing that kind of work, to bring this in, but to also know that when you're working with it individually, that we're each going to have a very unique experience with this as we're bringing all of these kind of lost aspects of ourself back into play. There are going to be aspects of yourself that you put away and you probably forgot about. Again, I want to really emphasize that when this happens, when we go through this sort of fragmenting process, it's because at the time it serves us. Our mind perceives it as the healthiest option, the right option, to keep us safe, to keep us happy, to keep us from harm, emotional or physical. This was walled off. This was taken out of our awareness. But just because it was appropriate at a certain point in time doesn't mean that it's going to stay appropriate or necessary throughout the course of your entire life. Perhaps there is knowledge later on down the line, say after you've processed a trauma, where you can access that information that's been walled off and really pull a lot of wisdom from it and be able to apply that in a way that helps you to grow, helps you to evolve, and become a stronger, more self-confident, self-actualized person and individual. So keep this in mind as you're working with it, and setting an intention as you're working with it is very helpful too. Just showing up and being ready to do the work and being open to what it has to offer us in terms of sort of reintroducing us to our own self. Now, into the more mystical side of what Turquoise Barrel has to offer. So I've talked about the subconscious and the conscious mind and bringing us into more of a state of full self-actualization by bridging the gap between the two and allowing us to access our inner wisdom and all of the various experiences and information we've gathered through our entire life. But there is something really interesting that happens when we're asleep. This is part of the reason why sleep is so important, and there's many reasons for that on a physiological level. But our subconscious mind, as we're sleeping, is essentially taking all of that gathered information, whether we were aware of it or not, and sort of filtering it out, sorting through it, processing everything, figuring out the important parts to integrate into our consciousness so that it can be used in real time. And so sleep is a really important time for us to sort of marinate in everything that we've gathered and really begin to integrate and actualize things that we're learning and the ways in which we're growing. And of course we can do this while we're awake. We're actively learning something and beginning to apply it. But that sleep state is when we really sort of put our guard down. We're not so distracted by all of the stimulation that's occurring. And so that's when a lot of the deepest forms of integration can actually begin to occur. And that is why sleep is so important. If you've been a student, and then you've probably experienced the phenomena that if you go through a period of time of insomnia while you're in school, you're having a much harder time retaining the information that you're learning. If you're sleeping well and you're well rested, it becomes much easier. Suddenly you're picking things up faster and it's not quite such a chore. So that applies to our entire life from the time we're born until the time we're done. So if we wear this at night during this dream time, it's going to help to kind of amplify that dream state and make this a much smoother and easier process for the mind to start sorting through things subconsciously and bring it into the conscious. But it can also be very, very useful in helping us to, if you're a lucid dreamer or if you've been wanting to try to access the ability to lucid dream more often, it's also good for traveling. If you are familiar with something like astral travel or traveling in your dreams, visiting places or people or other realms of existence even, this is something that Turquoise Barrel can begin to facilitate and assist in once all of these aspects of your mind become more available to you. It can also really function as a wonderful supplementary tool when you're doing things more of a mystical or spiritual nature, things like yoga, meditation, if you are involved in different kinds of shamanic practices or rituals. So if you're trying to access this more esoteric aspect of yourself, and you have to consider that being fully actualized, being more of your true self, having more of your full potential available, actually makes it easier to begin to access these higher states of more spiritual experiences, because we're not worried so much about who am I, why am I. You're just present. You're able to be much more present for this more mystical and spiritual experience that's occurring. And then on top of that, you have this sort of limbic flow that's occurring in your conscious and subconscious mind, where you can really pull more wisdom and grace and balance and harmony from these more spiritual experiences and be able to apply them as tangible learning experiences and less of just sort of an awe-inspiring moment that is enjoyable, but what did you really learn from it? So if these are aspects of things that you're really looking to kind of enhance, or you're looking to begin to kind of experience more, play with more, gain more access to, then Turquoise Barrel is definitely a tool that I would recommend considering bringing on board. So now we've covered some of the bases of what Turquoise Barrel can do, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. as with most gemstones, I always like to say that, this is a short list of what it can do, but each person is going to have their own very unique experience with whatever gemstone they're wearing. I will say that turquoise beryl, I'm a very sensitive person energetically, and I have to try new gemstones in moderation. I have to work my way up, which is something that I recommend to most people that I talk with and that I teach. But turquoise beryl is interestingly one where I have found that its energy is profoundly soothing. It's very gentle and stable. It is very strong. It's palpable, but it's not in an overwhelming way. So if you are someone that tends to be more sensitive, I think that this will be a very gentle journey for you. And I'm really excited to see what everybody has to say about their experience with wearing it. So please do let us know. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I have the information listed in the description below. And I will be happy to do a consultation with you if you'd like to go a little bit deeper in what turquoise beryl can do for you. There's also additional information listed on the website in the description if you want to read a bit more in depth about what I'm talking about. And again, any other questions, please do let us know. And thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Be well.